Welcome everybody to this evening's meeting of the Planning, Regulatory and Licensing Committee meeting. Before we start the agenda, Gerrit Morgan will read out the webcasting procedure.
Okay. Before proceeding today, I have to remind everyone that this committee will be recorded and will be broadcast on the authority's website. The public seating areas will be in view of the camera, and by entering the chamber and using the public seating area, members of the public are consenting to being filmed. Please could committee members please ensure that their mobile phones are switched off as they interfere with the recording. Please use your microphones at all times when you are speaking. However, during the meeting, if any committee member has any questions or comments, please indicate to the chair by a raise of hands. Please do not activate your microphone until you have been called by the chair to speak, and ensure that you turn off your microphone when you have finished. Also, please could you ensure that your microphone is used when a recommendation is moved and seconded.
Thank you. Before I start the agenda, can I welcome Councillor Sian Slater to our first Planning Committee meeting. I'm sure you'll do as good a job as your mother, who was sat in the committee previously. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Apologies have been received from Councillors Goldsworthy and Lewis.
Apologies from Councillor Leighton Smart. Any other apologies? That's it, I think. Right, the next item on the agenda are any declarations of interest taken into account A and B on the agenda. Any declaration of interest? There are none indicated. We now go to the open session, and we have a report there on licensing. That's item 3. The intended use policy for Hackney carriage vehicles, to consider report of the corporate director, and that's pages 1 to 8, and Paul Lewis is going to take it through it.
Thank you, Chair. Purpose of the report today, members, is to put to you an intended use policy for Hackney carriage vehicles with a view to approving the policy to go out for consultation. The background to the report, as detailed, recent case law determined, or previous case law determined, that where an authority licenses a Hackney carriage vehicle, the vehicle can then be used as a private hire vehicle anywhere in the United Kingdom. So basically a Hackney carriage, as you'll be aware, is able to be hailed, whereas a private hire vehicle is for pre-booking only. So operating as a Hackney carriage vehicle licensed by this authority enables that driver and that vehicle to be used anywhere in the UK for private hire work. This has presented issues, particularly in some of the larger cities, who have introduced policies and procedures. Basically, this case allowed operators or allowed vehicles to be licensed by authorities and then used in these larger cities, and presenting unfair competition to those drivers who have gone through that city's procedures and policies. Case law has come into play, which has allowed authorities to create an intended use for applicants of Hackney carriage vehicles, where the applicant has to determine and has to prove to the licensing service that they intend to predominantly use that vehicle in the authority where it's licensed. That will allow us, where vehicles are then used remotely and used in outside areas, where evidence is brought to our attention that is predominantly used in these areas, that we can bring back before committee with a view to getting the licence revoked. As well as the unfair competition in these larger cities, post Rotherham, obviously we have a duty to ensure that any vehicle and driver that we licence, that we carry out proper monitoring and proper enforcement. And this presents an issue where somebody may be licensed and carrying the Merthyr badge, is operating in areas such as Bristol, outside our scope, outside any information received on them, and obviously puts our reputation at risk, and obviously increases enforcement difficulties for us. So the recommendation before you today is to, one, approve the policy, with a view to putting out for a 6 weeks consultation period to bring back before this committee. I await members' decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions from members? Any questions? Right, Councillor Chaplin first, and then Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. Paul, will the trade be consulted on this policy. That's the, our own licensed taxi drivers.
My intention will be each Hackney carriage proprietor who's currently licensed with us will be written to individually. It'll be put on the CumTAF consultation hub as well as through the usual media channels that the authority uses. I will also be consulting with neighbouring authorities, particularly authorities at Bath, at Bristol rather, and Birmingham, where we are seeing applicants actually come into Merthyr to licence, to seek the views of those authorities on our proposal.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Barrett?
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with the policy, but I would like to perhaps go one step further and say people addressed in the county borough. I'm not quite sure if I am inaccurate, I'd say I apologise, but I think some cities are looking at that as well, where people are living local, that area, or only for the taxis for that area.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Mansfield.
The two cases as quoted in the report, the one at Stockton and the one at Newcastle, the one overturned the first one, did it?
The first case set the precedent really that once you become a Hackney carriage vehicle, you can carry out the private hire work. Obviously that was then challenged by a number of authorities who were being affected by vehicles licensed by neighbouring authorities coming into their authority working, and that has led to the Newcastle case basically saying that if an intended use policy is brought in by an authority, then you can restrict vehicles you licence operating predominantly outside of the area. Just to make members clear, we're not saying that vehicles licensed by Merthyr can't work outside Merthyr. Our traders will have an equal crack of the whip at work outside of Merthyr, but what this policy seeks to prevent is drivers and vehicles who are predominantly going to work, for instance, in Bristol, have no inclination to work in Merthyr, but are purely coming here in order to take advantage of our conditions to get their vehicle licensed, and then will operate permanently in the Bristol area, which is what has led to bringing the policy or proposing the policy.
Any other questions, members? No? No other questions? Any comments? No comments? No? Could therefore you see the recommendations on page 3, 5 and 5.1. The proposed policy is set out in paragraph 1.6 for approval and consultation as outlined in paragraph 1.8. Can someone
I move.
I'd like to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We are now ready to vote. Please vote. That's carried. Thank you. We go on to the planning applications. That's recommendations of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 and the Planning and Compensation Act 1991. And that is item 4, P/14/0252. It's the land at the former Council Depot, New Road, Dowlas, Merthyr, Tydfil, and that's to consider the report of the Corporate Director, which is on pages 9 to 18. Judith Jones is going to take this report.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to an area of land measuring approximately 1.5 hectares to the south of St Illtyd's Primary School and adjacent to the Civic amenity site. The site was previously used as the Council's Highways and Waste Cleansing Depot, and a number of outbuildings and structures within the site have recently been demolished and much of the site has been cleared of any waste material. Full planning permission is now sought for the change of use of the former Council Depot to a transport depot, which includes 15 parking spaces for buses and 10 spaces for cars. The proposal also includes the erection of a new industrial unit, office building and a canopy to an existing building within the site, together with the provision of an associated hard standing area and retaining works. Members should be aware that since the submission of the planning application, the site has been used as a transport depot with approximately 21 coaches parked in the site. The foundations of the proposed new industrial unit have been laid and the retaining works within the site have already been carried out. Therefore, this is partly a retrospective application. As a result of the consultation exercise carried out, one objection was received from the Engineering and Highways Manager on the grounds that the proposal has the potential to adversely impact on the existing highway network in respect of the types and volume of vehicular movements and the effect it has on the existing highway users and pedestrians. Insufficient information has been provided in support of the application to properly assess the highway safety implications. As a result of the publicity exercise carried out, 4 letters of objection were received, and the concerns raised largely relate to the fact that the development has already commenced on site without permission, and the highway safety concerns in respect of the suitability of the access road to accommodate the proposed depot. The merits of the application are provided in the planning considerations section of the report on pages 13 to 17. The principle of the development is considered to be acceptable. However, the applicant has failed to provide sufficient information to enable a comprehensive assessment of the impact of the proposal would have on highway and pedestrian safety along the access road serving the site and the adjoining roads. As such, the proposed development is contrary to policy BW12 of the LDP, and it's recommended that the application be refused.
Thank you, Judith. Questions, members? Yes.
On the safety part, due to this, have we discussed this with our Safer Routes department down in Pennebar? Because we didn't have big Safer Routes around that area going back a couple of years ago. So if you've got a problem and you see where the president's walking, have we discussed that with them? Because this guy spent a lot of money in it. You know, everybody who's a bond, right? He spent a lot of money, tidied it up. It looks a bit better than it did many years ago because he just left. So now, it's hard to say for us to kick us out, and because for us, we want to support him some way to improve it. That's what I'm trying to get at, because his job's there. And if we leave if they move away from there, that area will go back as a dumping ground, and we don't need that again, do we? You know, so how can we all get it in?
Yeah, I don't disagree, and as you'll note from the report, we say that, you know, we're supportive of the principle of the development, and, you know, if you look at the different sections in the planning considerations, you know, we state that we are happy with the majority of the application, but obviously, as you'll appreciate, highway safety is imperative, and we need to be satisfied that that element of it is acceptable, and at this point in time, we haven't received enough information from the applicant to satisfy us on that point.
I come back. Have we discussed it with our Safer Routes department?
Available routes.
Yeah. Pardon?
Available routes they're called now, not safe route.
Yeah, that would be something we'd be looking for the applicant to submit as part of that information, you know, that he has gone down that route as well.
Okay. Any other questions from members? Yep. Councillor Alan Jones first then.
Mr. Chairman, I would assume that there have been negotiations with the applicant with regard to the problem that, and that despite requests then or the meetings, that the information is still not available.
Yeah, that's correct. There've been lengthy negotiations, but unfortunately the information hasn't been forthcoming.
Councillor Mansbridge.
That's the question I was going to ask, but in view of, you say there's negotiations taking place, is he being assisted to amend his application then?
Yeah, I mean, you'll note the application was actually submitted last year, and, you know, the case officer has been in regular discussion with the applicant. He's quite clear on what is required of him as a result of the engineering manager's comments, but the information hasn't been submitted. But he's been given the opportunity to do so.
Any other questions from members? No other questions? Any comments? Question?
Thank you, Chair. I'll get on the assessment. Do we know why is it reluctance? Is it cost-wise, or is it just not obeying to the request, or is that?
I believe it's a bit of both, to be honest. Obviously, there is a cost to carrying out the work, and he feels that he's obviously spent a fair bit of money on putting the application together. So, you know, his reluctance is, yeah, both of those.
Any other questions? If not, any comments? Councillor Chaplin.
once again, we're having a retrospective application presented. I know the process that if they submit an application retrospectively, we have to consider it. But this is happening all too often, I'm afraid, and we need to let developers know they must have pre-application discussions and before they start any work of an engineering nature on site, because on this particular site, it's suspect that there are dangerous chemicals in the ground there, and he may have disturbed them.
Any other comment? No? No other comments? If not, you need a mover and a seconder. Is a member prepared to move the recommendation, which is for review?
I'll move the recommend, Chair.
Move the recommendation.
recommendation.
Seconder to that recommendation. The next item on the agenda is P/15/0130, the Lindy Industrial Park, Pentrobach, Merthyr Tydfil, and that's to consider the report of the director. That's pages 19 to 28, and Hugh Roberts is going to take us through this report.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is an application for the construction of a vehicle test facility to be used ancillary to the existing industrial use of the site. There's demolition of the two high bay buildings as well, erection of lighting columns and other associated works. Committee should be aware that revised plans have been submitted after this report has been published. The amendments relate to the proposed test ramp and proposed lighting columns. The lighting columns now proposed to be 10 metres. I think the report refers to 9 metre high lighting columns. The test ramp, the original dimensions of which are highlighted on page 20 of this report, would be increased to a height of by a height of 3.3 metres, giving an overall height of 5.6 metres, and would have an overall width of 23 metres. Given that the test track is located to the rear of the main factory building, which exceeds 13 metres in height, this increase in height and width would have minimal impact on the visual appearance of the surrounding area. Likewise, the increase in the height of the lighting columns by 1 metre is also considered to be acceptable. There be no objections to the application as a result of the consultation carried out or the publicity exercises undertaken. However, a late letter has been received from Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust, who raised no objection subject to a condition which stipulates that a written scheme of investigation is submitted to us and approved if the application is permitted. Members will note that the main concern with regard to this application, the extension of part of the test track and southern bund outside of the settlement boundary and into a green wedge. As highlighted in the report, the impact on the openness of the green wedge would be minimal, and the significant economic benefits that could be forthcoming if this application were to be granted are considered exceptional circumstances which overcome the local development plan policy objections. The noise from the use of the test track has also been fully assessed in terms of its impact on neighbouring residents. The Environmental Health Manager has considered the submitted report and considered the noise levels to be acceptable subject to appropriate conditions being imposed. Given this, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions highlighted on pages 26, 27 and 28 of this report, and given the response from Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust, an additional condition if members are minded to permit this application to ensure a written scheme of investigation is submitted to us and approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Hugh. Before I ask for questions from members, I'm asking you a question. Have you all seen the more detailed plan which the planning officers brought? Has everybody seen that? Councillor Chaplin? Oh. The plan is here available and you can see it if you wish. Okay. All right. Councillor Smith, question.
First question I'm going to ask, how many jobs this is going to bring into the county borough? Because I've seen this, I was there when he went as the forklift, so it's most important, how many jobs that's going to bring in, and good quality jobs.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Yeah, the report
Tell us what you point out.
I don't think that's relevant to the planning application. That could sway a planning application, and I don't think it's relevant to the planning application.
Yeah, well, in this respect, there is a technical advice note which refers to economic development, and it is, in this particular case, a relevant planning consideration. If you look at the conclusions that have arisen from this report, the economic benefits arising from job creation outweigh some of the other harms from the impact on the green belt and the impact outside settlement boundaries. So it is a relevant question, and it is relevant to this application. So if I'll answer Councillor Smith's question, then, Chair, if I may, the number of intended new jobs or jobs at this site are 475 full-time jobs and 25 part-time jobs. I should point out, though, this application is for the test track. The use of the building itself for manufacturing purposes doesn't require planning permission. It's already got that permission. So hopefully, if this test track is developed, then the building can be occupied by the intended users. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mansbridge and then Councillor John.
Can I ask if that'd be civilian jobs or service jobs?
Good question. What's the difference between the two? Sorry.
Sorry, one's right, and one's not.
I haven't got that information before me. All I've got is the details of the number of jobs, but I suspect, well, I couldn't answer that off the top of my head, but I suspect they are jobs which are a combination of both, maybe. If you've read the information on the application, there's very little detail on the end users of the site, unless you've read the noise assessment, which does relate to the site being used by a certain type of vehicle. So you may want to draw your own conclusions on that, but from the application itself, it doesn't actually stipulate.
Councillor Chaplin. Any other question from any members? No? If not, any comment? Councillor Chaplin.
I'm pleased to hear that this site, which is many years ago, the Koreans were there. They came and went. Lindy have come and went. And for all the money that's been spent there, I see this as a positive development, because irrespective of whether they are service or civilian jobs, money will be spent in the town.
Thank you. Any other Councillor Smith?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to support Tony on that, because this is, to myself, this is a small picture. What else is going to come into the town area? Because now it's a big industrial unit, a lot of work to be built there, especially with the MOD, so who knows what's going to happen. And again, that's been empty twice, Tone. Right, business rates coming to the town, and people spending money, that's the main thing. So, and plus the 470 jobs. If it was half, it's better than nothing, and I think it's good.
Councillor Mansbridge.
The Honourable Councillor left out the fact that it was a ski slope before all that.
Councillor Chaplin.
If I could come in there, originally this is where Trago Mills was going to go.
Oh, that's not good.
Yes, we're going back in history now. Any other questions from members? No? If somebody can move the recommendation, which you'll see on page 26. Is the member prepared to move?
I'll move.
Councillor Mansbridge has moved. Is there a member who's prepared to second?
I'll second. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Councillor Simon Williams, that's been moved and seconded. You see the recommendation for approval with 11 conditions. Can you please vote now? Yes, I beg your pardon. There's the additional condition which has been explained to you by you all. Understand that, okay? It's carried. Information reports on item 6, the appeal received. Item 7, appeal decision. Number 8 are the delegated decision report lists. They're all information reports. Item 9, any other business as deemed urgent by the chair. I have none. Can I thank you all for your attendance and declare the meeting closed?